Why don't we go ahead and start? Okay, well, first of all, thank you everybody for joining this exciting announcement for the next massive leap in unit testing. I'm Todd Blaschka with Sapient, and I'll be moderating the session here. Rishi, our co-founder and CEO, will be walking you through the announcement. And feel free to drop questions in chat. I'll be moderating that, and we can have a Q&A section at the end. So with that, let me hand you over to Rishi.
All right. Welcome, everyone. What an exciting day. And thank you, Todd. As Todd introduced, I'm founder and CEO of the Sapient AI. But, I have also lived and breathed the life of a software developer for a fairly long time. And so definitely understand, the kind of, the pain and responsibility that software developers takes it on a daily basis. I have lived through it. I've experienced myself. And it's not secret. I think there are plenty of literature on the internet that talks about the developer's toil, that exists in the today's world. The most of developers end up spending more than half of their time just doing the non-development activity. And so that's the reason why I'm super excited today, especially about this new announcement that we are going to make. This is going to bring the revolutionary approach with the new product, and that will help reduce some of the developers' toil and help them get a better life and be more successful. With that, let me start sharing my screen. I have a few slide deck to share, and after that, I also have a short demo. So, all right, everybody. Once again, welcome and thank you for joining the call. Is everyone able to see my screen? Very nice.
Yes.
So this product is indeed about the unit testing. As a developer, we all like unit testing. When you have the unit testing, it gives you the confidence about the code. If you have plenty of coverage from the unit testing perspective, it helps you come up with a better design. It pushes you to better, more modular the software design. It helps you to iterate on some of the code that you write and make you successful as a part of the agile team. And, it's really the blessing for the new developers when they have the code with plenty of the unit test coverage. It acts as like a documentation. It helps them understand the underlying code and application and everything. And more importantly, it saves you the cost, because now you are able to detect the most of the production bugs early in the software development lifecycle. So there is not much overhead involved when you detect the bug in the production and you come back and you fix it. So it's an amazing thing. Unit testing is an amazing thing. I have seen it myself. This is what I keep on hearing from the most of developers. If you have the unit testing, you feel confident about it. But at the same time, we cannot deny the fact that unit testing is hard. It requires a lot of time and investment. And so statistically, if you're writing good, reliable code with plenty of coverage, you end up writing probably 2 to 5 times amount of the code being testing as a unit test. And that takes lots of time for the developers. They end up spending probably 20 to 40% of their time. And it doesn't end there. There are a lot of other challenges. It's very hard to the troubleshoot. Whenever you come across some failures in the unit testing world, as a developer, figuring out where exactly is the problem and how to fix it. And a lot of developers have this natural inclination to go back and just simply comment the code. Developers don't necessarily have this QA mindset. You often miss many of these edge cases and boundary condition, and that leads to the code with non-comprehensive coverage. And then there are a lot of challenges in maintaining the code. The reality is, like most of the codes will evolve. It will keep on changing, and in any time you're making some changes, there are a lot of interlinked references, and as you're making the change, you have to make the changes at like 10 different places. If you have a lot of code accumulated also as a part of the unit testing, then the overall changes, overall problem, the overhead becomes much, much bigger, right? So on one hand, we love the unit testing, we like the benefit that we get from the unit testing. On this, on the other hand, it is hard and, it brings a lot of overhead. So as a developer, I always ask this question, like, can I get something better? Can I rip all the benefit from the unit testing so that I can write a better high quality code and, I can detect the bug as early as possible. But at the same time, I don't have to deal with so much of overhead, like, so much of the manual labor intensive work that I have to do, the moment when I accumulate too much of unit testing code in my repository. Well, ladies and gentlemen, introducing the SIP in Codeless, the modern unit testing platform that really brings all the benefit of the unit testing without having the liability to maintain, without having all the overheads that typically associated with the unit testing. I'll talk more about it, just to give you the context. Um, you know, the way we are approaching this is going back to the fundamentals. When you ask about the unit testing, it's all about testing at the unit level. And so, as a developer, when you write the code, you're trying to figure out at the unit level that, hey, there are certain methods I would like to test it. And the way you test it is you provide some input and you expect some output. And, there is a natural inclination to automate this entire process. So you end up codifying it, and that means you're writing more code. And the moment you have a more code, then you need to maintain it. That means that code needs to be tested. And so you end up into this, the circular loop. You write a code, then you have to test it. And, if you write more code to test it, that means the other code has to be tested and verified. And we are trying to break this infinite loop. As a product, the SIP in Codeless is going back to the fundamentals, trying to capture the entire testing aspect in the form of the input and output. Input and output is the focal point of the entire unit testing exercise, right? So that's how we are approaching. And then, wherever we see this, the contract of the input and output getting breached, we are able to detect that. And we are doing all these things without writing the code, without giving the additional overhead to the software developers to maintain more code, right? And just to give the context about how this entire thing has evolved, I'm sure like unit testing has evolved a couple of decades ago. As an industry, we worked hard. There are some the generic frameworks and the library that evolved, which helps significantly to the software developers. But at the same time, the bulk of the work remained manual. As a developer, you still had to write the code manually. You still have to acquire the necessary QA skill set to bring the comprehensiveness. And the debugging and the code maintenance, it remain a nightmare. Like, whenever there is a problem, it still takes a bit of a firefighting to figure out the root cause of the problem, fixing. And then, it does take a significant amount of time to maintain the test alongside the original code. Well, there was a lot of optimism with this AI coding assistant. So especially, there's so many AI, coding assistant. They are all coming up with the promise of generating the code, and it did help. It's a highly efficient in generating the code. As a developer, I have experienced myself. We used to have the SIP-AI coder that was capable of generating highly accurate code at the large scale. So as a developer, people did get benefit, by automating some of this code generation aspect. It also had the QA perspective, which brought some, the comprehensiveness. But the biggest problem is that the AI coding assistants are built on the same foundational element that originally unit testing had it. And so when it comes to the error messaging, it remains very cryptic. It remains the nightmare for the software developers to go out and find it. When it comes to the code maintenance, it still has to be done by the developers. You might be able to use the AI coding assistant to generate lots of code in a short span of time, but still somebody has to own the code and maintain it. Well, we have taken a radical different approach with the SIP in Codeless. Number one thing is we still bring all the automation, but without going through the typical unit testing code. So we are able to capture all the test cases, understand the inner details of this input output, and we do the full-fledged automation. And we bring our this comprehensive in this, so that there is a higher level of the confidence in terms of the code coverage. And we have taken a bit of a different approach where the error messaging or the troubleshooting is far more easier. It's a friendly to the developers, and it's much more targeted. And the finally is the code maintenance. And so since there is not code that gets generated as a part of this exercise, so there is no need for the code maintenance for the software developers. So again, this is a bit of the radical new thinking that we have come up. We still do all the unit testing, bring all the benefit, but very less overhead on the software developers. They can get everything done most of the things done in an automated way using the Sapient Codeless. Here are some of the experiences that I'm sharing, like a few screenshots. So this is a typical unit test look like. As you can see, like there is plenty of the boilerplate code, some code that is trying to set the state, invoke the function, and then a bunch of assertion statements, which is trying to verify the expectation. Well, it doesn't have to be like that. As a developer, probably I'll be a lot happier if I could see those inputs and outputs clearly, and I just move away from it instead of looking at the code and trying to figure out which one is input, what is output, and how exactly it's working. Here is another example of the error messaging and the debugging aspect that I just talked about before. This is the dreaded exception. The most of the developers will experience. If you are doing the testing, you run into some problems, and then you try to navigate to the root cause of the problem using the exception trace. And even if the simpler problem will take a significant amount of time to figure out and troubleshoot, it doesn't have to be like that. It can be much better targeted, and so that you might have made a certain mistake in your code, and you could quickly identify what that mistake is. You can just quickly go back and fix those mistakes. And then there is the maintenance aspect of it. The rule is the change is the rule of the nature. And so, if you're writing some code, that code is never fixed. It will always evolve. There will be some incremental changes. Whatever the methods that you're writing, you might have a new output, or maybe the method signature is changing, which is taking the different set of input and producing a different set of output than what it was before. So maintaining the test alongside the original code, that becomes the huge overhead. And the Sapient Codeless has taken this approach of this input output, which brings those the delta in a friendly way, and it helps you maintain in an automated way. Okay. And so again, if I have to summarize this entire process, the software development has come a long way. We came up with the unit testing. We devised, some generic frameworks, generic design patterns, and the AI coding assistants did come to our help. As a developer, now I'm able to produce probably 10 times, the more amount of the code that I was doing before. But what I'm seeing, and especially with my experience while talking to many of the users, many of our own customers, is the code generation, might not be ideal. It has to be done diligently, because if you're generating a lot of code, somebody has to own it and maintain it. You can run into this whole code sprawl problem where you need a much bigger team to understand and maintain it. And I think this is where the Sapient Codeless has taken an altogether different approach. It works with alongside other tools, but it is able to address the testing aspect in a fully automated way without bringing the additional liability. So as a code, it is a liability. Code is never the final destination. You still want to achieve the final, the feature, the functionality that you would like to achieve. And then it does it in a comprehensive way. It came up with a novel approach of presenting the error messages to the developers so that they can be, they will be able to troubleshoot some of the issues, and they will be more successful in what they're doing. Okay. Um, I'll do a little demo here. Let's, keep the question coming, as Todd mentioned. I think, we'll take some of the questions in the end. You're able to see my screen, Todd. You can still see my intelligence, is correct?
Yes.
All right. So again, everybody, I think the Sapient, the Codeless is available for free. I'll encourage everyone to go to our website and sign up. You can experience the Sapient Codeless yourself. I have installed the Sapient Codeless. It is in the form of a plugin. And so I installed the plugin in my IntelliJ. What you're seeing right now is sample code and a very simple code, the user service that takes the user ID and password. But it goes through the few steps. It's trying to validate if it's the right combination. But like a typical code, it does some checks. If user ID is null, throw some exception, else fetch it from the repository, and then go through the few steps. Try to see if password is matching or if the password is not matching. And so now the number of the different test cases are so many, probably 5 or 6 now. If you start writing the unit test, like there will be like, more than 200 lines of the code. And that is something, we are quite capable of generating that. But again, those 200 lines of the code will become part of the source code repository for this simple 10 or, the 12 line of the code. Coming to the world of the Sapient Codeless, you can get this unit testing done very easily. There are multiple ways you can invoke the Sapient Codeless. Here I'm going to use this gutter area. I'll just try to generate the unit test. So this is the fresh environment. It's going to look in the code, analyze it, and it will try to come up with the list of the test cases. So here we are. These are the different test cases. And if you dig deeper, you will get the very nice interface in the form of the input and output. All these different test cases are available. You can review it, you can make changes, you can test it out, you can do all these things, right? But let's say, I made some mistake, like, instead of value false, maybe accidentally I made it true, right? So unit testing is an awesome thing. Unit testing is out there to rescue from some of these mistakes. And so what will happen? I'll execute. Obviously my test is going to fail, and I will not run into this dreaded exception trace, but my error message is going to be much more targeted and simple, friendly than a typical the unit testing result, right? So here it is. I can see that assertion has failed. This particular test case has failed. The rest of things are looking really, really good. And again, everything is happening, without me writing any code. But, I also want to maintain it. So just for the sake of it, let's say I say, no, you know what, this is correct. I do want to return the true. This is the expected behavior that I have. I insist on it. And so what do? I ask the system that, why not you just update the test and let's change the behavior that I'm expecting. And so let's try to regenerate it. And so it did come up that, hey, there are some changes, some of the things, this change is required here. And the change is very simple. The output was supposed to be false, and now the output's supposed to be true as a part of the new version of the code. If I accept all the changes, it's all good. It will execute fine. After that, I'm happy. My unit testing is working. But again, this is a very simple example that I'm showing as a part of the demo. I'll encourage everyone to go ahead and try exercise some of the most complicated one. Earlier today, I was working on it, and I just did something, some crazy here. So, coming from my, working with some of the security team, one of the recommendation is that, hey, don't store the password in the original form. It should always be some kind of digest, either MD5 or SHA-256. So I thought, why not I just implement this in this code? And so password is no longer going in the original form, but the password is always the MD5 version of whatever it is. Guess what? Of course, like my execution is going to fail now because, I have changed the behavior. So So it's expected to fail. That is totally okay. And in order for me to maintain it, obviously now I need to bring the notion of the MD5 value of some of the tests that I have. And so let's look at it. Like, most of the tests are fine. Couple of them does require some changes. And as you can start seeing, like, here is the MD5 value, that needs to be incorporated, and so on. So guess what? I'll say, like, it's looking all good, I accept all the new version. And I'm good with it. Now, all the tests should be passing, right? You can, this is the highly accurate, the unit testing product. You can do it for the individual classes methods. You can do it for the entire project. If I want it, I'll be able to repeat the same exercise for the entire project, and it will be able to go through each and every class, and it will be able to generate the code and generate the unit test for all of them. All right. So let's keep the question coming. Probably we'll take it up in the end. We do this sapient, the Codeless, where we capture this input and output in the form of a YAML. It stays within the project structure. So it still follows the same, the software development lifecycle. As a developer, you are making certain changes. You would like to include the Codeless test as a part of your change. And finally, when you're committing everything, your original change as well as the test along with it, right? The benefits are given. I think most of you would understand. It is a highly efficient. As a developer, you are freed up from writing so much of the code, and typically this code goes somewhere around 2 to 5 times of the original the code being tested. And as a developer, you end up spending probably 50% of the time. It brings the comprehensive coverage. So there is a culture of the quality that you can develop within your team. Your repository is no longer bloated, so you can cut the code and the cost associated with it, and you can evangelize the best development experience in your team. And so, as a developer, very less toil on developer, as a developer, I can have a much better experience. And finally, once again, thank you so much for joining this call. This is an amazing the product that we have released. We have taken the codeless approach to the the unit testing. Unit testing is one of the hardest things to do because you are looking at the very granular the kind of the interface that needs to be brought up in the codeless form. And if you are able to achieve, then it sets the standard for the rest of the industry to follow. And essentially we are telling this entire industry that the testing doesn't need to be in the form of a code. We can take, if we are capable of taking the unit testing in the codeless form, we can do any type of the testing in the codeless form. And we could potentially end this this infinite cycle of writing some code and then testing, and then you are writing some more code to automate the testing, and then you have responsibility to test another set of code. So I'll encourage everyone to go to our website. You can sign up for free. You can experience the Sapient Codeless yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rishi. We do have a few questions here that I'd like to bring to your attention. The first one is, the input-output example implies testing a fairly simple data structure. Will the approach scale to complex representations such as a property graph or a knowledge graph?
Yeah, 100%. So your testing is going to be as complex as your original code. I think if the underlying code is simple, the overall testing is very simple. But if the underlying code is having, the more number of the input signals, then is eventually it will be taking that many number of input signals. So the way we have designed the code, it's not just coupled with the what we call it as an input arguments. But under the hood, if there is a logical dependency on some other layers, and if it's fetching certain information, then it will depend on that as well. In fact, if I can share my screen again, The way to think about this entire thing, in the example that I was sharing, it's a very simple code. Like it takes username and password is trying to validate it, but under the hood, it has a certain dependency on the repository of the password encoder. And so if I have to analyze the behavior of this particular block of the code, it has input signals coming from, the explicit inputs, but also the input signals coming from the repository and other things. And essentially, the combination of all the input signals will produce the right output. The Sapien Codeless is designed in that way. It will be able to capture all those input signals and present it in the friendly format.
Thank you, Rishi. Next question is the plugin present for VS Code IDE?
Our plugin at the moment supports mostly the Java and the related languages like the Kotlin and the Scala. With said so, we are going to expand our support in the coming months. I think we have some release schedule later this year. Most of the Java developers, they work on the IntelliJ IDEA, so that's the reason why I have we have invested into the IntelliJ, but we are open to the VS Code extension as well. We haven't seen many requests from the Java developers. As we are supporting the other languages, we will have the VS Code extension for sure.
Thank you. Next question is, how do we ensure every developer executes the test before committing to Git repositories?
100%. Again, this can go as a part of the Sapient setting in the Sapient configuration, but it could also be part of your other governance rule that you might have put in your environment, in your CI/CD environment. It's a very easy to set up the quality gates as a part of it, and you can ensure there is a certain level of the coverage met before the code can be committed. So that is something doable as a part of the setting.
So I think you sort of covered the follow-on question there, which is how does this work with the CI pipelines?
100%. So as a part of the CI pipeline, we'll publish the documentation. So this Codeless test can be executed anywhere. You should be able to integrate it as a part of Maven or the Gradle project. And it's capable of dynamically generating the necessary test code from the input and output manifest captured as a part of this exercise. And you will have the same level of the code coverage and other experience that you have it with the regular unit test code.
Thank you. And then next question, is this an update to the existing IntelliJ plugin for Sapien?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is this an update to the existing IntelliJ plugin for Sapien?
Yes, I think we have bundled a lot of capability in the in the same IntelliJ plugin. So it might require a bit of a different the license for the to exercise the Codeless part of it, but you should be able to upgrade the existing plugin and start experiencing it.
Right. And any questions on that, any issues, contact Sapient, info@Sapient, and we can help you. Another question, and this is regarding code privacy. This attendee has been using Sapient for a while, and regarding code privacy, is the test generation, is it done by a proprietary model locally, or any network call is made for it to remote service?
Very good question. I think, when we have designed the Sapient, we have kept the code privacy in mind. So there are the multiple options that are available. We use the generative AI, but we are also using the regular machine learning models. And so we have seen some of the customers, they run it in the disconnected mode, which means like it's really some of the machine learning model that gets downloaded and it's available for the execution in the in offline mode. But as a part of the product, we also do this code obfuscation. And so internally, when we are looking to, and when we are analyzing the actual code block and trying to process more from the unit testing perspective, we are able to obfuscate the code before it leaves the privacy. And so then it goes to our cloud environment, and we do the the final processing, and we bring the code back to the developer's desktop. So there are the multiple options available. My background is that before founding Sapient AI, I also co-founded another company in the Codeless.io, that you might have heard of. Before that, I was a platform architect at Apple. So I have been part of some of the most security conscious environment. The Sapient is designed for the larger enterprises, and the security and the code privacy is an important element as a part of the product. So it is taken care at every level, as we have this flexibility to most of the teams, and it really depends on how they want to configure, if they can operate fully disconnected mode, or they can trust on the code obfuscation to take care of the code privacy.
Excellent. And one more question we have is, does it support mocking?
It does. It does the support mocking, and it has a flexibility to customize based on some of the mocking frameworks that you might be using. We all know, I think, every environment is different. The software developers, they have their own choices. People could be using JUnit or the TestNG, or the Mockito, or some of the other libraries. So there is a good amount of flexibility that is available in the form of the different frameworks and the different versions that you could set it as a part of preferences.
Thank you, Rishi. And another question. I love it. Keep these questions coming. We're here for you. How does it differ than open source agents such as OpenDevin and Aider, AIDER?
Yeah, I think, I would not like to, take, the full-fledged analysis here, but I think the generative AI agents operate differently. As I said, as I was sharing, as a part of the demo, the most of the generative AI agents, or these, the coding assistants, are more like the generalists. It's built on this existing foundation that we have. What we are doing here, as a part of the Sapient Codeless, we have taken a radical new approach where we fully automate the entire thing without adding the code as a liability. And then we have really gone deep into bringing the best experience for the software developers, so that they can be successful on daily basis, not just in writing the more code, but also troubleshooting and maintaining it.
Thank you, Rishi. And last, one more question here. Is the original code generation option still available with Codeless? I'm thinking of a scenario where I'd like to use Sapient AI for unit test generation, but other people in my team still prefer the manual mode, or are not allowed to use plugins.
Totally. I think we have kept that option open. The test code generation option is still open there. And again, this is based on, as the questioner mentioned, I think there are the people in the team, and they all have a different choices. They will be able to generate the regular unit test code. What is interesting, and what is going to be an awesome as a part of our offering, is that you'll be able to navigate continuously back and forth between the codeless and the coded form. And so, today, I have this codeless form, I like it, but I would like to go deeper into it. You should be able to convert the codeless into the coded form. You'll be able to make the edit, make the changes, you can do all these things. But as a part of the subsequent release, you will have an option to convert all the unit testing in the codeless form. And that includes not just the ones that are generated by the Sapient, but even your own unit test code that you might have written, and something that you'd like to offload from your repository, hand over to Sapient. Sapient will be happy to take over, and will be able to maintain that test going forward.
One more question. I understand it gives more tooling on top of Copilot, but fundamentally, how does it differ than Copilot?
It is very different in the sense that the Copilot, it's a machine that generates a lot of code, lots of code based on what it has learned. I think what we are doing here is taking it to the next level. We are leapfrogging on any of this the AI coding assistant. We are changing the way we approach the unit testing. as I mentioned, unit testing is all about testing at the unit level. And as a developer, I care about there is an input set and there is an output set. We don't care about the code itself. It's a natural process of automating my input and output combination so that I'll be able to test it repeatedly at every build or at every release cycle. But that was not my original request. And if there is any way an external system could manage, that will be my required effort. That will be my the preference. So as a developer, you don't have to maintain the two copy of the code, one the original code that has all the innovation built in, and there is another version of the code which is just trying to test that.
Fantastic questions. We have kept you busy, Rishi. That is it for the questions right now in the chat. Please do, you saw on the link, a link I dropped in the chat. There's a free version that you can download and start playing with today. We'd love to hear your feedback on that. You could reach us at info@sapient.ai. And any other following questions, feel free to reach out to us. Back to you, Rishi.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining the call. And thank you for all the wonderful questions. I think, those were really, really deep questions. I'm glad that, you all asked, and, I was, hopefully I was able to answer those questions. We can always follow up as Todd mentioned. Thank you so much.